Season 1. My child, something within you is stirring right now. Even as you listen to these words, and it is not by accident that you are here at this exact moment, because long before you clicked on this message, your soul already knew this encounter was coming, and perhaps for reasons you cannot fully explain, you have been feeling a quiet tension inside your chest, a sense that life is more than routines, responsibilities, and repetition. And this message arrives as a gentle but powerful reminder that you were never meant to merely survive. You were meant to awaken, to remember, and to rise, because there is a divine intelligence moving through your breath, guiding your steps even when you felt lost and unnoticed. And if you have been carrying silent pain, disappointment, or confusion, understand this clearly. Heaven has not ignored you, and the delays you experienced were not denials, but preparations shaping you, strengthening you, and aligning events beyond what your eyes could see. Because often when everything feels still, something sacred is assembling beneath the surface, and what you once thought was being taken from you was actually being redirected towards something far greater. And tonight, as you listen, your spirit is being invited to slow down, release resistance, and lean into trust, because the divine does not shout, it whispers, and it speaks most clearly when the world grows quiet within you. And maybe you've wondered why certain doors closed without explanation, why certain people faded away, or why plans that felt right suddenly collapsed. But what if those endings were mercy? What if those separations were protection? And what if the universe was clearing space so you could finally step into a version of yourself that longer doubts its own worth, because you were never created to beg for validation from a world that cannot measure your true value. You carry a spark that existed before fear, before comparison, before limitation, and that spark still lives in you, waiting patiently for your permission to lead. And the moment you begin listening to that inner call, something remarkable happens. Your perception shifts, your intuition sharpens, and opportunities once hidden suddenly appear because alignment changes. What you attract, and when your inner world comes into balance, your outer world must follow and understand this divine truth. What you focus on feeds what you believe, becomes what you live, and what you consistently affirm eventually becomes your reality. So if you have been speaking defeat over your life, if your inner dialogue has been heavy with doubt, know that you can gently rewrite that story starting now, because words carry spiritual weight, and intention sets direction. And as you align your thoughts with hope, courage, and truth, your energy begins to change. And when your energy changes, your path responds. This is not coincidence, this is law. And you are not late, you are right on time. The chapter that felt stuck, the season that drained you, the waiting that tested your patience, all of it has been refining your perception so you can finally recognize the blessing when it arrives, rather than overlooking it. Because often miracles arrive disguised as ordinary moments, subtle nudges, unexpected conversations, quiet realizations that land softly but change everything. And the more present you become, the more clearly you'll feel guidance moving through your decisions, not as pressure, but as peace, not as fear, but as clarity. And when confusion fades, confidence rises, not the loud, arrogant kind, but a steady, grounded knowing that you are supported, seen, and guided even when the path ahead is still unfolding. You are never walking alone. And remember, this divine strength does not mean the absence of struggle. It means the presence of resilience within it. You were never promised ease, but you were guaranteed growth, and every challenge you faced was strengthening your spiritual muscle, teaching you discernment, patience, and faith. And now, as you stand at the edge of a new awareness, the invitation is simple but powerful. Release what no longer aligns. Forgive what weighs heavy, and trust what you have not yet seen. Because surrender is not giving up, it is handing over control to a wisdom greater than your fear. And when you do, you will notice how life begins to respond with gentler timing, supportive signs, and unexpected openings. And perhaps the most important truth you must remember is this: you are not broken. You do not need fixing, you need remembering who you were before the world taught you to shrink, before disappointment taught you to expect less, before fear convinced you to settle. And as this remembering deepens, you begin to show up differently, not desperate for approval, not driven by scarcity, but anchored in purpose and calm assurance. And when this happens, others may feel your change without understanding it. They may sense your boundaries, your clarity, your presence, and the energy you carry will either inspire or intimidate. But that is not your responsibility. Your only task is to stay aligned with truth and continue walking forward one intentional step at a time, because destiny is not a single moment. It is built through daily alignment. Small choices, honest self-reflection, and the courage to trust your inner voice, even when it contradicts the noise around you. And if you ever feel uncertain, return to stillness. Breathe deeply and remember you are guided, you are protected, and you are unfolding exactly as you are meant to. And as this season continues, allow this message to settle within you. Let it anchor you when doubt arises, and return to it whenever you need reassurance, because something powerful has already begun within you. The more you listen, the clearer the path becomes, and what once felt distant is quietly moving toward you now. And as this awareness quietly expands within you, something subtle yet undeniable begins to shift, because growth rarely announces itself loudly. It reveals itself through calm, steady realizations that gently replace old habits, reactions, and beliefs you once thought were permanent, and you may notice that what once triggered fear no longer holds the same power. What once felt urgent now feels optional, and what once confused you now simply asks you to pause rather than panic. And this is how inner elevation truly works, not through dramatic displays, but through grounded understanding, because when your spirit rises, your nervous system relaxes and clarity replaces chaos, and you start making decisions not from survival, but from alignment. And this is important because aligned choices invite aligned outcomes, and gradually life starts reflecting back a version of you that feels more authentic, more grounded, and more awake than before. And you may not yet recognize all the changes taking place, but you will feel lighter, more patient, and strangely hopeful without needing a reason, because hope at this level is no longer circumstantial. It is intuitive. It is the quiet knowing that something meaningful is unfolding, even if the details remain hidden. And understand that the divine often works in layers, first healing your perception, then strengthening your boundaries, then upgrading your vision, and only then delivering the manifestation, because without preparation, the blessing would overwhelm you. And so, if things still feel incomplete, trust that timing is active, not absent, because there is a precise sequence to growth and you are currently within it, even if the destination has not yet revealed itself. And now there is an invitation being placed before you to release the habit of rushing outcomes and instead deepen your relationship with presence. Because when you are fully present, you stop chasing signs and start recognizing them everywhere, and subtle confirmations begin appearing. Perhaps in conversations, thoughts, recurring insights, or moments of peace that feel unearned yet reassuring. And these are not random. They are checkpoints letting you know you are still aligned even when the road bends unexpectedly. And if doubt tries to return, remind yourself that doubt is simply fear, asking for reassurance, not proof of failure. And reassurance does not come from outside validation, but from inner attunement. And the more you learn to trust your intuition, the less power external noise holds over your direction, and slowly you become the kind of person who listens before reacting, who observes before speaking, and who moves with intention rather than impulse. And this inner maturity is a sign that your soul is integrating wisdom, gathered from previous trials. And those trials were not punishment, they were initiation shaping your discernment and emotional intelligence, so you could carry greater responsibility and greater peace simultaneously. And now, as this phase unfolds, you may feel called to simplify, to declutter distractions, release attachments, and become more selective with where you invest your time, energy, and emotion. And this is not withdrawal, this is refinement, because clarity thrives in simplicity and power, flows where focus goes. And when you stop spreading yourself thin, you begin accessing a steadier strength that others may feel but not immediately understand. And this strength does not need explanation, because it is rooted, not reactive, grounded, not defensive. And you may notice that your presence alone begins to shift conversations, environments, and outcomes, not because you are controlling anything, but because grounded energy naturally influences unstable spaces. And as this becomes familiar, you will realize that you were never meant to convince or prove yourself to the world. Your role is to remain aligned and allow resonance to do the work. And those who are meant to align will recognize you effortlessly, while those who are not will quietly fall away without conflict. And this too is divine order, not loss but redirection. And with each redirection, more of your authentic path becomes visible, not loudly, not dramatically, but unmistakably. And eventually you will look. Continuing from the middle of the unfolding awareness, you may begin to realize that the silence you once feared is now the very space where truth feels safest, because silence is not empty. It is responsive. It listens back. And when you stop filling, every moment with distraction, explanation, or expectation, you start hearing guidance that was always present, but never loud enough to compete with noise. And this is where real transformation anchors itself, not in external change, but in internal. Consent, because nothing shifts until you are ready to stop resisting what already knows how to grow through you. And the reason this phase feels unfamiliar is because it requires trust without immediate evidence, movement without urgency and belief, without constant reassurance, and that is uncomfortable for a mind trained to measure progress only by visible results. But spiritual progress moves differently. It rearranges perception before circumstance, it stabilizes identity before opportunity, and it recalibrates worth before achievement. So if you feel restless yet calm, uncertain yet grounded, stretched yet steady, recognize this as integration, the process by which insight becomes embodiment and embodiment becomes direction. And during this stage, you may feel drawn inward more than usual, questioning motives, redefining success, re-evaluating relationships, and reconsidering goals that once seemed essential but now feel distant or incomplete. And this does not mean you are losing ambition. It means your ambition is maturing, evolving from external approval to internal alignment. And alignment requires honesty, the kind of honesty that asks not what impresses others, but what sustains you over time. And as that question settles your priorities, quietly shift, you begin choosing depth over speed, meaning over momentum, and intention over impulse. And these choices may not look dramatic from the outside, but internally, they are reorganizing your future, because every aligned decision carries compounding impact. And this is how destinies are shaped, not through singular bold acts, but through repeated subtle alignment. And if impatience arises, remind yourself that anything built to last is assembled gradually, and anything rushed often arrives fragile and unsustainable. And now that you are learning to operate from steadiness rather than urgency, your energy begins to signal readiness, and readiness attracts responsibility, because growth is not only about receiving, it is about carrying what you receive with care, wisdom, and integrity. And you are being prepared to carry more influence without losing humility, more clarity without losing compassion, and more confidence without losing discernment. And this balance is rare, and that is why the path to it feels solitary at times, because few choose it consistently, and fewer stay when it requires restraint rather than recognition. But you are not meant to be everywhere. You are meant to be effective, and effectiveness comes from presence, not visibility. And presence deepens when you stop seeking affirmation and start honoring intuition. And soon you may notice that you are less reactive, more observant, less defensive, and more secure. And these are signs of inner authority, forming not authority over others, but over your own responses, emotions, and choices. And when you gain authority over yourself, external circumstances lose the power to destabilize you, and disruption no longer feels threatening. It feels informative, because you trust your ability to adapt, and this trust frees energy previously spent on anxiety, comparison, and control. And now the energy redirects toward creativity, insight, and contribution. And this is where fulfillment begins taking shape, not as a distant goal, but as a lived frequency woven into ordinary moments. And perhaps this is the greatest shift. You will notice that fulfillment no longer waits for milestones. It exists in alignment itself, and this realization dissolves the pressure to prove, reach, or outperform, allowing you to move with authenticity rather than performance. And from here, your influence grows naturally, because people respond to authenticity more than effort, and clarity more than persuasion. And without trying to teach, you become an example. And without explaining, you offer reassurance. And without forcing outcomes, you inspire movement. And this is leadership at its most refined, quiet, steady, grounded, and deeply impactful. And as this chapter continues, you may feel called to articulate truth more clearly, express boundaries more confidently, and honor needs more fully. And these expressions are not selfish. They are necessary, because clarity respects both self and others. And when you communicate from self-respect, you invite mutual respect. And when you honor your capacity, you preserve your sustainability. And sustainability ensures that purpose is not burned out, but lived long enough to matter. And now, as your internal foundation stabilizes, your external reality will begin, responding with alignment. Opportunities will appear that match your energy, relationships will evolve to support your growth, and directions will clarify without force. And this does not mean challenges will disappear. It means challenges will no longer confuse your identity, because you know who you are regardless of circumstance, and that knowing becomes your anchor. And from that anchor, you can navigate change with courage, flexibility, and trust. And if at times progress feels subtle, trust that subtle roots hold the strongest weight, and if recognition seems delayed, trust that integrity compounds invisibly before it becomes undeniable. And remember, you are not here to rush the process. You are here to honor it. And honoring the process means staying present, patient, and responsive rather than impatient, reactive, and rigid. And each time you choose presence over pressure, you reinforce alignment, and alignment sustains momentum without exhaustion. And now, having reached this level of awareness, your responsibility shifts from seeking guidance to embodying it, not waiting for certainty, but acting from clarity, not asking for permission, but honoring discernment. And this is where your path becomes unmistakably yours, shaped less by external instruction and more by internal resonance, and that resonance will continue to guide you as long as you remain honest, receptive, and grounded. And as this expansive understanding settles, recognize that nothing important is missing, nothing essential is delayed, and nothing meaningful is out of reach. What is meant to unfold is already in motion, responding to your alignment, not your anxiety. And the more you trust this truth, the more fluid your journey becomes, because resistance dissolves where acceptance leads. And acceptance does not mean settling. It means partnering with timing. And timing aligned with authenticity always delivers in ways effort alone cannot. And so remain attentive, responsive, and open, knowing that you are not becoming ready. You already are. And what unfolds next will meet you at the depth you have prepared, not the speed you demand. And this preparation continues quietly, shaping a future that feels not only successful, but sustainable, peaceful, and true. Please like and subscribe my channel.